They said Western education was evil, but they used phones to trigger bombs. They claimed to be the defenders of Islam, but they killed children in classrooms, bombed mosques during Friday prayers. They called it jihad, but the world called it terrorism. This is the story of Boko Haram, how it started, how it fractured, how it destroyed lives, and how some of its members today are getting scholarships, jobs, and a second chance at life, while the victims are left with nothing. Boko Haram started quietly, no bombs, no guns, just a charismatic preacher named Muhammad Yusuf. Back in 2002, Yusuf set up a religious complex in Maiduguri, in Borno State. It had a mosque and an Islamic school in it. To the poor and frustrated youth around him, Yusuf's message sounded revolutionary. He said Nigeria was corrupt, that the government was evil, and that Western education, Boko, was haram, forbidden. He didn't just preach. He gathered his followers to burn school books in public. He told them to pull their children out of government schools. He said true Muslims, the very true Muslims, should reject all modern and secular systems. People joined him, not just out of faith, but out of hunger, joblessness, anger. Yusuf provided food, shelter, sometimes even money. But behind the scenes, this man was building a militia. By 2009, things exploded, literally. After a confrontation between Boko Haram members and police in Maiduguri, a full crackdown began. Yusuf was arrested, and a few days later, he was executed in police custody, not in court, not under trial, just killed. The footage of his battered body was leaked. His followers saw it as proof. The government was actually wicked, and they had to fight. That was the beginning of Boko Haram's armed rebellion. Yusuf's deputy, Abubakar Shekau, he took over. And if you thought Yusuf was radical, Shekau was something else entirely. He was erratic, paranoid, ruthless. He took the group underground, reorganized, returned in 2010 with a vengeance. They attacked police stations, army barracks, churches, mosques. Everywhere, they began bombing public places. Then in 2011, they bombed the United Nations headquarters in Abuja. That killed 23 people. That's when the world took serious notice. But for Nigerians in the northeast, this was already a war that they were fighting. Boko Haram started kidnapping women and children, using girls as suicide bombers, killing school children in their beds. One of their worst attacks was in Buniyadi, where 59 boys were slaughtered in a school dormitory. Then came Chibok, the 2014 abduction of 276 schoolgirls. That story shook the world. But in Nigeria, it was just one of many. They were not just attacking, they were taking over towns, Goza, Bama, Dikwa, Mubi. They declared their own Islamic caliphate in 2014 and they began running their own version of government. In their captured areas, people lived under brutal Sharia law. Women were forced to marry fighters. Men were whipped in public. Thieves had their hands cut off. They banned education, banned music. Even healthcare in some areas was not allowed. Boko Haram ran training camps in the Sambisa forest and around the Lake Chad basin. There they trained young boys to handle rifles, mount ambushes, prepare suicide vests. Many of these boys were child soldiers, abducted from their families, drugged, forced to kill. Some others joined willingly, lured by maybe food, false promises or revenge. Boko Haram funded itself through looting, bank robberies, kidnapping for ransom. They also taxed people in their occupied towns and they raided humanitarian convoys. Some reports suggest that they received external funding in the early years, but most of their money it came from violence. And while this was happening, the Nigerian military was struggling. There were constant reports of corruption, sabotage, missing funds, even soldiers running out of ammunition mid-battle. Some politicians were accused of secretly supporting Boko Haram, or at least turning a blind eye to them. As for Shekau, people started saying he couldn't be killed. Between 2009 and 2021, the Nigerian military claimed at least 5 times that he had been killed. Each time he would just pop back up with a new video, ranting, waving a rifle, quoting scriptures, mocking the government. Some people started joking that had this man been cloned, because he keeps coming back. Others say maybe he has body doubles. Whatever the truth, he survived airstrikes, gun battles, assassination attempts for years. But his leadership was chaotic. He killed civilians indiscriminately, even other Muslims. That's what eventually pushed ISIS to step in 2015. Boko Haram pledged allegiance to ISIS, rebranding itself as Islamic State West Africa Province, ISWAP. But soon, ISIS replaced Shekau with another leader, Abu Musab. Shekau refused to step down. The group split. Now there were two terror groups. Boko Haram, still led by Shekau, unpredictable, violent and extreme. And then there was ISWAP, more strategic, focused on military targets, slowly winning more influence. The infighting between the two groups, it was brutal. They ambushed each other, executed defectors, burned rival camps. In 2021, ISWAP fighters surrounded Shekau in the Sambisa forest, and rather than surrender himself, he blew himself up with a suicide vest. For real this time. Even ISWAP confirmed this man was dead now. But Boko Haram wasn't gone. Its fighters scattered into smaller cells, some joined ISWAP, others continued as rogue attackers. And the violence did not stop. By 2022, Boko Haram and ISWAP, they had killed over 350,000 people. This is according to UN estimates. That includes combat deaths, starvation, disease caused by displacement. More than 2.5 million Nigerians were forced to flee their homes. Thousands of children lost their parents or they were born in captivity. To survive, locals started forming the Civilian Joint Task Force, the CJTF. These were regular citizens like farmers, traders, students. They picked up cutlasses, slingshots, sticks, anything. They stood guard at checkpoints. Many of these people died defending their communities. Meanwhile, the Nigerian army, with help from Chad, Cameroon, and Niger, they launched joint operations to push Boko Haram back. Chad, under President Idris Deby, was especially aggressive. They were leading assaults that wiped out major camps. The government introduced a program called Operation Safe Corridor. It offered amnesty, rehabilitation, jobs, and in some cases, even scholarships to Boko Haram fighters who had surrendered. This is when things got deeply controversial because while thousands of Nigerians were still in IDP camps, living in tents, drinking dirty water, former Boko Haram members, they were seen being trained in vocational centers, eating 3 meals a day, wearing white, clean clothes, even getting support to study abroad if they wanted. To many Nigerians, this felt like betrayal. Imagine losing your child to like a bombing and then watching the bomber get reabsorbed into society like nothing happened. People asked, okay, so where is the justice? They said, what about the victims? Is this forgiveness or are you forgetting? Today, ISWAP remains the dominant force. They've adapted. They now use drones. They ambush convoys and they avoid civilian casualties. This is to gain local support. But the trauma is still fresh. Children in Borno still panic when they hear loud noises. Many girls rescued from captivity, they're stigmatized, rejected by their families, and then they have babies that they did not ask for. Governor Zulum of Borno State said it plainly. If we don't give the next generation education, jobs, and a reason to believe in Nigeria, we'll be back here again. And he's right. Because Boko Haram did not start as a war. It started as an idea, planted in frustration, watered with neglect, grown in silence. That's the real danger. Because if we don't learn from what happened, it can happen again. Let me know what you think in the comments. Do you believe in the rehabilitation of the former Boko Haram members? Or do you think maybe justice should have come first? Either way, the clear thing to me is the victims cannot be forgotten. We must never allow this kind of horror to become normal to us. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoy stories like this, please follow me. I tell them all the time.